Okay, cool. Sorry for the bad lighting, guys. So I worked on a project with DPR out in Phoenix. It's best stated just as a project, I would say. And our stakeholders for the purposes of this study are the GC, which is DPR, us, and the subcontractors. And the personas we're looking at is a field office coordinator in our construction trailer, a project engineer, a superintendent, all DPR, and then an office coordinator on the sub side and a foreman on the sub side. Systems of record, we're going to be looking at HammerTech, but the points I'm making are not specific to HammerTech. That's just what we used on our particular site. You could substitute it for other peer softwares. And documents of record are going to be the safety data sheet, which I'll refer to as an SDS from here on, a hazard analysis, which I'll refer to as a JHA, and then a site safety plan, which I'll refer to as an SSP, and just all combined. That's just what I'm terming as the pre-mobilization package, kind of. So this is the current state with the way things are. I should also add that it earns the Bluebeam notation just because that's what we use as a PDF reader out in the field. So we see that the field office coordinator lots of times has to send an email to gather data, which could be the SSP, the JHAs, or the site safety plans, the SDS from the subs, and those could come from office coordinators or the foreman in the case of the JHA. And we have our field office coordinator send an email, initiate that, grab the document, and then transfer those into our HammerTech software, which is where roles like superintendent and project engineer will confirm that they're good to go in the case of the SSP and the JHA. And some pain points here are with the SSP and the SDS. Lots of times the subs are somewhat frustrated because this data has been handled before in initial contract negotiations. So they feel like this is the second time they've had to review it. Another pain point is the use of email as a middleman between something that's intended to be a straight to the mouth type of interaction. It's a pretty inefficient practice and it applies to all the document exchanges. And another thing too is whenever we're requesting JHAs, there's confusion as to whether one is needed sometimes. Because you deal with different industries like painting where a JHA might not be needed because it's not a high risk activity, as opposed to welding where absolutely one would be needed. So sometimes we catch the subcontractors off guard and they're scrambling to get one put together as a pre-mobilization document. So this is my proposed future state. Basically, I've separated it into initial agreements and a time of work. So the points here that the SDS and the site safety plan are agreed upon at the initial contract negotiations, and those are fed into a software like HammerTech then, as opposed to later, to eliminate that back and forth. And then I'll just go ahead and switch over here. So it takes the vetting process that we do every time we select our subcontractors, and it shifts that into software at that time instead of closer to the time of work later. And since it was already being discussed in those negotiations, it's fresh on everyone's mind, and feeding it in is a very logical thing to do then. And then there's JHA prompting leading up to the start day, and that depends on the industry, of course, but that would occur closer to the start day because lots of times subs don't have an accurate JHA in mind until closer when they understand site conditions better. But by prompting them to have JHAs, the likelihood that they'll produce one on time is higher, and no delay is had. So yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. We'll pull up your final summary just to overview and go through any questions. So yeah, you want to just final
Okay,
overview?
cool. So shared pains briefly, revisitation of safety information that was covered in contract negotiations, use of email to facilitate a software that wasn't designed to be handled that way, and then retrieval of JHAs. Gains is by getting that safety data upstream at the mouth of the river, is what I've been saying. It makes the data onboarding a lot more efficient. And then JHA prompting according to trade so that there is no off guard JHAs and there's an expectation that it's on the way.
Awesome. Great. Well, round of applause for Montana. Great job. as always. And yeah, safety documentation is always definitely a shared pain for all processing, but such a necessary shared pain. And one of the great examples we talked about of a few examples where an analog, especially a pretest plan, that the act of writing it out is actually the value, not necessarily the data that you get from it. So it becomes interesting as we get into the data world, how often safety becomes an interesting one, because sometimes tracking it can actually have a negative effect.
That's right.
But